The British people deserve to know the truth. What darker truths does the suffering of these girls reveal about this country? And why won't the government find out?
I thank the Honourable Lady. I think it's a shame that she only referred to one sort of child abuse victim when the statement is clearly about all child abuse victims, of which there should be no hierarchy of who is. We are talking about also children raped by their fathers, raped in other circumstances, in children's homes and institutions for many, many years. And I think it is a shame that she didn't speak about any of their experiences.
In January, the Home Secretary said the government would conduct 5 local inquiries into the rape gangs which have terrorised so many innocent children. Over 3 months since the government announced these local inquiries, Tom Crowther KC, a barrister invited by the Home Office to help establish them, knows almost nothing about their progress, and neither do we.
I can announce to the House that to prioritise the protection of children and improve national oversight and consistency of child protection practice, this government will establish a new Child Protection Authority. Building on the National Child Safeguarding Review Panel, the Child Protection Authority will address one of ICSA's central recommendations by providing national leadership and learning on child protection and safeguarding. Work to expand the role of the panel will begin immediately, and we will consult on developing the new authority this year.
Bradford's leadership is simply not going to act by themselves. So I ask the Minister, why is this government letting the very councils that failed victims decide whether they want to be investigated or not? And when will this government step up, use their statutory powers and give the victims and the survivors in areas like Keighley and the wider Bradford district the full inquiry that they've wanted now for almost 2 decades?
Recognising that when we're talking about people who work with children, often we think of teachers or social workers. We are talking about sports coaches as well. We are talking about people in the clergy. We are talking about lots of different people. So the guidance is going to have to be quite widely drawn and quite specific.
The girls we are talking about, Mr. Speaker, are predominantly white. The men who preyed on them were predominantly Muslim, generally either from Pakistan or of Pakistani heritage. One of the victims from Dewsbury was told by her rapist, I quote, "We're here to fuck all the white girls and fuck the government." Will the Minister accept that, in many cases, these crimes were racially and religiously aggravated? How, without a national inquiry, can we understand what part these factors played?
In many of the rape gang cases, counsellors, council workers and police officers were complicit and often corrupt. So why is the government refusing to set up a specialist unit in the National Crime Agency to investigate those who should have protected those innocent girls and instead participated in and facilitated their abuse?
To answer the Honourable Gentleman's question, is that if there is criminal cases that can be taken against any of these people, I am absolutely certain that the task force that is working across to improve the arrests, as we have talked about, how we have seen an increase in arrests. But I am more than happy to go and speak to the task force and see where there can be criminal cases taken against those people. I am more than happy to see those people locked up for as long as they deserve. However, what I would say is that without the mandatory reporting duty on the statute books, we were left for some decades without that to be able to take to task criminally people who covered this up. We will rectify that.
Why is the framework for local inquiries now being led by ministers rather than by independent voices such as Tom Crowther? Why is the £5 million set aside for inquiries no longer being allocated but instead delivered on an opt-in basis? And what does the government intend to do about local leaders who say there is no need for an independent inquiry, like in Bradford or in Wales? There is no question that the state has failed these children time and again. Take the case of Anna from Bradford. Vulnerable and in residential care, at the age of 14, she made repeated reports of rape and abuse to social workers who were responsible for her. But just the following year, aged 15, she married her abuser in a traditional Islamic wedding ceremony. Far from stepping in to stop it, her social worker was aghast. The authorities then arranged for her to be fostered by her abuser's parents. The ringleader of the Rochdale rape gang, Shabir Ahmed, was employed as a welfare rights officer by Oldham Council. And yet not one person, not one, has been convicted for covering up these institutionalised rapes. So why have ministers refused to establish a dedicated unit in the National Crime Agency to investigate councillors and officials accused of collusion and corruption? And I am sorry to say that that unit, Mr. Speaker, must also investigate police officers. In one case, the father of an abuse victim in Rotherham was arrested by South Yorkshire Police when he attempted to rescue his daughter from her abusers. He was detained twice in one night while, on the very same evening, his daughter was repeatedly assaulted and abused by a gang of men. It is clear these criminals were unafraid of law enforcement. In Kirklees, Judge Marson said, "You were seen with your victim on at least 3 occasions by the police. None of that deterred you, and you continued to rape her." How, without a national inquiry, can we know how and why these monsters enjoyed effective immunity for so long? And how can we be sure it will not happen again? We on this side of the House have voted for a national inquiry and tabled amendments which would guarantee the publication of ethnicity data on a quarterly basis, terminate the parental rights of convicted sex offenders, and make membership of a grooming gang an aggravating factor during sentencing so that offenders get the longer, harsher sentences they deserve. Will the Minister commit today to adopting these amendments to protect our children? Finally, I would like to read to the House one particular ordeal. Just one example of what these children have suffered. I must warn colleagues, and especially those in the gallery, that this is extremely graphic, but we must not look away or sanitise this evil. Sentencing Mohammed Karar of Oxford to life in prison, Judge Peter Rook said, "You prepared your victim, a 13-year-old girl, for gang anal rape by using a pump to expand her anal passage. You subjected her to gang rape by 5 or 6 men. At one point, she had 4 men inside her. A red ball was placed in her mouth to keep her quiet. When she was 12, after raping her, she threatened you with your lock knife. Your reaction was to pick up a baseball bat with a silver metal handle, strike her on the head with it, and then insert it inside her vagina." This is not about me. It is not about the Minister or the Home Secretary or any of us in this chamber. It is about them. Little girls up and down our country whose brutal and repeated rapes were permitted and hidden by those in the British state whose job was to protect them. They deserve justice. In 5 towns, these children and their families may get partial answers. But I have mentioned 5 towns in the last few minutes alone, and there are at least 45 more. In those places, they will get no answers at all. What does the Minister have to say to them? The British people deserve to know the truth. What darker truths does the suffering of these girls reveal about this country? And why won't the government find out?
Minister.
I thank the honourable lady. I think it's a shame that she only referred to one sort of child abuse victim when the statement is clearly about all child abuse victims, of which there should be no hierarchy of who is. We are talking about also children raped by their fathers, raped in other circumstances, in children's homes and institutions for many, many years. And I think it is a shame that she didn't speak about any of their experiences. Today's update also sets out how the government is supporting victims and survivors in accessing support and seeking justice. We are tasking the Criminal Justice Joint Inspectorates to carry out a targeted inspection on the experiences of victims of child sexual abuse in the criminal justice system. We are instructing the Information Commissioner's Office to produce a code of practice on the retention of personal data relating to child sexual abuse. In some cases where there have been serious institutional failings which contributed to the abuse, those institutions have provided financial redress schemes or compensation to victims and survivors who are affected. We continue to support those schemes as recognition by those institutions that they badly failed children in their care. On the ICSA proposal for a wider national redress scheme for all victims and survivors of child sexual abuse in institutional settings, the scale of that proposal demands that it is considered in the context of the spending review later this year, and we will make further updates at that stage. But one crucial area where we want to make immediate progress is on the provision of therapeutic services for victims and survivors of child sex abuse. We will therefore bring forward proposals in the coming weeks to improve access to those services, with further details to be set out following the up-and-coming spending review. Also, ahead of the spending review, I can announce that in this financial year, the Home Office will double the funding it provides for national services supporting adult survivors of child sexual abuse, providing more help to those adults who are living with the trauma of the horrific abuse they suffered as children. Finally, we want to speed up progress to make it easier for victims and survivors to get recompense directly from institutions that failed them. We are therefore removing the 3-year limitation period on victims and survivors, bringing personal injury claims in the civil courts and shifting the burden of proof from survivors to defendants, thereby protecting victims from having to relive their trauma to get compensation they are owed. Mr. Speaker, today's update, building on the measures the Home Secretary announced in January, demonstrates this government's steadfast commitment to tackling child sex abuse. The measures we are implementing will protect more children, find more criminals and deliver support and justice to more victims and survivors. But this is not the end point. It is just the beginning. We will continue to drive forward reforms to protect more children from the abhorrent abuse and support more adult survivors of these traumatic crimes. And as we pursue our Safer Streets mission, we will use every available lever to drive progress on these issues across government and beyond. I want to finish with a word for the victims and survivors. No one should go through what you did. And while the failings of the past cannot be undone, we can, we must, and we will strain every sinew to prevent them being repeated. I commend this statement to the House.